What's going on, everybody? Jeff Holiday here, and today we're going to be doing a little bit different of a video. You see, I was reading this article and I found it so fascinating, I really wanted to share it with you, at least in video form. So before we even get started, I have to sing the praises of this incredible article that I found in Slate. The link is in the description below, as well as a few other references to what we're going to be discussing. Now, the topic of this video is really fascinating to me. We're going to be talking about traditional Chinese medicine and why it's bullshit. Now, I know some people might have an immediate reaction to that and being like, well, hey, it's all bullshit. Well, it is and it's not. The thing that's fascinating about it is where traditional Chinese medicine comes from. See, I make my living, my job is to research bad pseudoscience and then make these videos and explain why they're bad. I had not found out what I just found out today until today, and I'm shocked that I'd never heard this before, so we're going to talk about it. So, where did traditional Chinese medicine come from? It's true, you could trace it back through the history books of various different practices and some of the core conceptual ideas behind traditional Chinese medicine going back thousands of years. But what we understand today as traditional Chinese medicine was created by none other, and I shit you not, Mao Zedong. That's right, Chairman Goddamn Mao created traditional Chinese medicine. And here's how he did it. Mao's support of Chinese medicine was inspired by political necessity. In a 1950 speech, he said, "Our nation's health work teams are large. They have to concern themselves with over 500 million people, including the young, old, and ill. At present, doctors of Western medicine are few, and thus the broad masses of the people, and in particular the peasants, rely on Chinese medicine to treat illness. Therefore, we must strive for the complete unification of Chinese medicine." And now none of this should really come as that big of a shock if you're familiar with Chairman Mao. After all, this is the person who put forward the Great Leap Forward. He was vastly interested in trying to change China from what he perceived as a country far behind in the times and wanted to in effect westernize it through communism. In fact, the Great Leap Forward, as most people should be aware, and if not, then you need to go back and demand justice of your history teacher. The Great Leap Forward was his effort to push a society from agrarian or farming, agricultural based to industrial. And this led to the deaths of tens of millions of people. In fact, it was 45 million people. And a very common theme in things that Mao was trying to push, Maoist theory in general, his brand of communism, was one of unification. It's kind of a bullshit statement because he did at times push for class struggles against people for the sake of unification. But in this way, we can understand his push for trying to unify medicine was largely because they didn't have enough Western doctors. There wasn't enough Western care available for the people of China. So the one medicine was his answer to this whole thing. But it wasn't just a domestic push. No. He also wanted to wrap up traditional Chinese medicine into a perfect little present to give to Westerners. And we're going to get to that in just a minute. You see, I think we really need to point out something. Chairman Mao didn't actually believe in any of this crap. In fact, in the book, The Private Life of Chairman Mao, one of his own doctors is recounting a conversation that he had with Mao Zedong. "Even though I believe we should promote Chinese medicine," Mao told him, "I personally do not believe in it. I don't take Chinese medicine." But getting back to trying to export traditional Chinese medicine, one of the biggest problems was that there was no cohesive, collective group of practices or ideas. It was all disparate little fringe pieces here and there throughout the country. And this includes things like demonology, astrology, yin-yang, five phases theory, folk wisdom, things like that. Now, trying to bring this all together, he wanted to do it because he believed that Westerners were empirically minded. And at the time, we, for the most part, were. This is, 40s, 50s, into the 60s. this is right before we started to have a large flare-up of more weird spirituality things infecting our culture. So we were actually very empirically minded. And he knew that if he was going to sell it to Westerners, he also had to be able to sell it to empirically minded Chinese. For instance, this is interesting. In 1923, Lu Xun, China's most famous man of letters, reflected critically on his father's visits to a Chinese doctor. Visits that bankrupted the family and failed to produce results. I still remember the doctor's discussion and prescription, Lu wrote, and if I compare them with my knowledge now, I slowly realize that Chinese doctors are no more than a type of swindler, either intentional or unintentional, and I sympathize with the deceived sick people and their families. Oh, but it gets even more crazy than that. You see, in order to really sell this, to sell it even further, it needed to be standardized. So Mao set about instructing people that they needed to scienceify traditional Chinese medicine. So these weird little bits and pieces of this, folk remedies or whatever it was, were compiled into textbooks. As well, these textbooks were put into institutions where you could go to learn, a school to be taught traditional Chinese medicine. This is all standardized. This is all done as a form of unification, even though he himself knew that all of it was bullshit. He still pushed for this to actually happen, and that's really where the state of it came about. Now, what's incredible about this as well is we can see the effect of this in our culture here in the West right now with some of the words that we see all the time. For instance, the term holism, which, is the basis for holistic. Zhengtiguan, preventative care, another good one, is Yufangxing, and these were used to provide a new system inside of teaching traditional Chinese medicine. That's where all of that comes from. It comes from an actual propaganda campaign by a man who is responsible for potentially killing the largest amount of people on the fucking planet. Holy shit. But hey, it couldn't possibly get any worse, right? Couldn't possibly be even crazier than that, could it? Yes, it can. You see, he really wanted to sell this to Westerners. Really, really bad. So he actually staged fake surgeries, showing things like you don't need anesthesia, you can use Chinese acupuncture. When for thousands of years, China has paved the way for surgery medicine. The first ever real surgery for a human being under anesthesia was done by a Chinese doctor. He didn't use acupuncture, he used anesthesia. The first mastectomy was done by a Chinese doctor. He did not use acupuncture, he used anesthesia. None of this actually has roots in anything that is properly applied or even legitimately believed by people who are men of science developing medicine in China. All of this was folk legends packaged up with an actual propaganda campaign with fake results to sell to the whites. Incredible. Now, don't get me wrong. If you're somebody who has enjoyed acupuncture in the past, because it does have a way of being able to relax you, it does have a very strong placebo effect as well. If you believe in the theory of ki, of life force, whatever, that's your spirituality, I respect that. That's fine. If you enjoy qigong, breathing and physical conditioning exercise, even though it was invented, well, not invented, the roots of it come from antiquity, but the standardized practice of qigong was done during the whole Maoist regime. If you enjoy these things, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But I believe that it is really important for us to understand that these things that do promise a magic cure, these days usually peddled by well-to-do middle-aged white women in Sonoma trying to sell this to you at a fucking premium because it's gonna cure your goddamn cancer, it's important to know that this was actually born out of propaganda by a crazy person who, through his social policies, starved tens of millions of people. We should probably pay attention to that. You know, maybe in a way this is like the start of an anthropology series for me, looking at where all of these crazy ideas and these crazy themes come from. That might be interesting to do, you know, because I had no idea that a lot of the language that I see constantly, day in and day out, doing the research that I do for videos, came from this. And I'm fascinated, so I had to share it with you. But by all means, please go and check out this incredible article. I also have a little bit more in another website with kind of the history of how traditional Chinese medicine was formed inside of the propaganda machine itself. If you're into that kind of thing, by all means, go read it, learn about it. It's fascinating stuff. I'm like legitimately super excited and giddy talking about this, and it's actually a really good feeling. That's pretty cool. But anyway, that's going to be it for me today, guys. Thank you so much for your attention. I hope your family and you are well. I'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.